The two other stories I want to turn to next has to do with how far the Dems' direction in this country, just how far the Democrats are headed off the American plantation. And I want to start with, and these clips are just coming from, and I'm doing this today because it's Constitution Day. I'm going to start with our Beto O'Rourke, which I will confess is here from the great state of Texas. But he's not a Texan in his heart. I'm just telling you, folks, he does not believe in the liberty, the spirit of self-reliance that Texas is famous for. Beto O'Rourke, though, had numerous interesting things. First, I want to play a clip. This is actually from his Twitter feed, a speech he gave recently to some young people. And if we could play that.
Here's a tough thing to talk about, though we must. Rich people are going to have to allow or be forced to allow lower income people to live near them, which is what we fail to do in this country right now. We force lower income working Americans to drive 1, 2, 3 hours in either direction to get to their jobs, very often minimum wage jobs, so they're working 2 or 3 of them right now. What if, as we propose to do, we invested in housing that was closer to where you work, very often mixed income housing, meaning the very wealthiest are living next to those who are not the very wealthiest in this country, to make sure that they can both afford to go to the same public schools, that we really have that as a place where in this divided country right now, you can come together without regard to your income or your race or your ethnicity or any other difference that should not matter right now.
Okay, you tell me how that proposal could possibly square with the concept of America, the idea that we're founded on the freedom of the individual, the right of the individual to live in liberty, the fulfilling of the idea that we all were created equal, that we have rights from our Creator to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This guy running for president on the Democrat ticket, he actually thinks it might be his job to decide who must live where. And he's not alone. You might think he's the wackiest or the most leftist of the Democrats. He's not. There are proposals under the Obama administration and the Federal Housing Authority talking about forcing people to move into certain areas, forcing others to move out, forcing the mixing of rich and poor, getting after realtors if they do not meet standards and targets, affirmative action type quotas in neighborhoods for getting people of a certain skin color to move in, and so you have a more racially diverse neighborhood, punishing realtors for not working toward that mission. These people on the Democrat side have not one clue what the idea of America is. Not one clue of the idea that America, a country founded on freedom, the Declaration saying the purpose of our existence, the purpose of government's existence is to protect the individual, to protect the individual's liberty. He's saying, you think you have liberty? Beto O'Rourke saying, no. I'll tell you where you'll live, and I'll decide who lives where and how close people get to live. And he talked about it in his tweet as a right. He used the word as a right. He may not understand this, but in America, our rights are spelled out in the Bill of Rights. They're not spelled out by Beto O'Rourke, who comes up with these crazy ideas and thinks he can define the Bill of Rights and add one that says you get to live near where you work. As you know, it's Constitution Day. We have the Constitution passed in signed in 1787, making it 232 years old. We have the Bill of Rights in 1791, a little over 4 years later. The Bill of Rights spells out freedoms. He's talking, his whole worldview is not about protecting your freedom. It's about government-controlled society, government-manipulated society, government deciding where people live and who get to live where and who must be punished and who must be forced to live next to somebody else. The guy should be running for president of Cuba, not America. Second Beto clip. This is also our friend Beto, a Texan in name only. He's most definitely not a Republican. He is a Democrat, but he's a Texan in name only. This is his clip about gun control.
You said, quote, Americans who own AR-15s and AK-47s will have to sell them to the government, all of them. You know, the critics call this confiscation. Are you proposing taking away their guns?
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
Okay, again, I understand that after every time we have a horrible shooting, we have a lot of discussion about gun control. people on the right tend to point out that we in our country have per capita fewer guns than we did 150 years ago, but we have more violent shootings. And so we ought to be looking at the causes, the conduct, the cultural trends, the cultural thought that is the real cause of this violence. And instead, he's going to grab your gun. And let me just say to you folks, even if you buy into the argument, well, who needs an AK, who needs an AK, whatever they are, AK-15, who needs that? That's none of the government's business. It's not the government's business. And please understand, if we give into this, if we give into, sure, you can have these certain guns, all that will ever happen with the American left is that more and more and more guns will fall into the description of outlawed weapons. More and guns will fall into that. There will not be the opportunity, in this country to pull back our rights, to get our rights back again. The left is about gun grabbing, gun control. He is more open about it, more honest about it. Beto is. The whole left thinks this way. The idea of their mission includes taking guns away. It's a leftist mentality, again, completely disconnected from the whole concept of our Constitution, the concept of the Second Amendment that says that people have the right to bear arms. And the Supreme Court has ruled that's exactly what the amendment meant. It didn't mean only certain people or only if you're going to use it for hunting or only a certain number. It meant you have the right to keep and bear arms. And the Second Amendment is not about enabling citizens to be able to go hunting. It's not in the Second Amendment to protect duck hunting season. It's not a Second Amendment even to allow you to defend yourself in private context, although that's a good reason that we have the Second Amendment on display. But it's important to understand we have a Second Amendment as the basis, as the reason, to give us the ability to keep the balance of power between the citizens and the government. It is not about duck hunting or even about self-defense. It is about preserving the balance of power between we the people and the government. Just ask the people in Cuba why they can never stand up against a repressive government, or Venezuela, or Russia. Look around the countries in the world, or even in Hitler's era. Hitler was one of the first things he did. Nobody can have weapons. Understand these have vast consequences for the future of freedom once we say that the leftists like Beto can take away guns. Last point, again, Constitution Day and our friend Beto O'Rourke. We have a clip about the border. Here's Beto talking to someone on the border.
The border has never been as safe and secure as it is now.
I want to pass along from a question from a congressman who does not represent the border, but he is in Texas, Dan Crenshaw, who's a new member of Congress. He's been very outspoken in favor of the president's agenda on the border, particularly.
Right.
And he wanted to ask you, he tweeted this, I'm just passing it along. It's not something he didn't text me. Would you, if you could, would you take the wall down now, here?
Yes.
Like you have a wall.
Absolutely.
Knock it down.
I'd take the wall down.
Okay. Sorry, my iPad's trying to flake out on me. Okay, what I want to say was, on this take down the wall thing, this is not just Beto O'Rourke having complete disdain for the idea of the Constitution, or the idea of limited government, or the idea of what rights consist of. This is Beto O'Rourke saying we don't need borders. I couldn't play the whole clip, and you've seen that, I'm sure, before. It was several months ago. In fact, I think it was before he even declared he was running for president. But portions of that interview, he was saying, yeah, it's really cool. We live in El Paso. People can walk over the border all the time. Why not? We live in an era where our southern border is flooded, not just with people from Mexico coming across to do business or maybe work and go home, but flooded with people from Central America. Flooded with, as we talked about in the show last week, we have people on the ground in Mexico enabling Islamic terrorists from the country of Bangladesh to get into America. We actually caught a trafficker who had helped, I think it was 118 Islamic, probably terrorists, from the country of Bangladesh, Bangladesh being rife with former ISIS, former Al-Qaeda. It is a basic national security emergency that our southern border is not secure. And his view is very much consistent with most of the Democrats, if not all the Democrats running for president. What they're telling you is they don't want a country. We have to hold them accountable for the words they are saying. They don't want a country. They don't want to have borders. They want to have anybody who wants comes in and, hey, what the heck, or it's a big party here. So we have Beto O'Rourke. I used to give this award to Bernie Sanders and say he was at least the most honest Democrat socialist, and he is probably still the most honest Democrat socialist. But Beto O'Rourke is telling you what the left-wing worldview is. I don't think, in the privacy of their own homes, the other Democrats on the ticket, with a possible exception of Biden, would in any way disagree with what Beto O'Rourke is saying. He's just getting more desperate because he's polling at 0 or something, or 2, so he keeps being more outlandish, more extreme, more anti-American. And honestly, no one on the Democrat side is calling him out. No one is saying, hey, Beto, we actually have to have borders. I mean, you can't have a country without borders. No one's saying that. All the Democrat contenders for president, with maybe Biden as an exception. No, Biden got onto it too, are onto the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal we talked about many times in this country. It's not a bill yet. It's just a mammoth proposal, would completely shut down this country, would constitute the imposition of radical socialism, very quickly leading to communism, because no one's going to comply with what the left is trying to do. And this is not the Occupy Wall Street Looney Tune protesters. This is not a tiny little segment of radical communists out in Berkeley somewhere. These are the contenders for president of the United States of America. And they all are onto the Green New Deal. They're all onto these ideas of letting the border lapse. And they're all about gun control. I'm telling you, folks, we live at a perilous time because these precious rights in our Constitution, the idea of a constitutional republic, is at stake if any of these jokers were able to move into the White House as president of the United States. This in 2020 is going to be one of the most consequential elections of our times.